Virtue of Wisdom of Nagarjuna. Mahaprajna Paramatasastra. 8 Yen Lamat. Composed by the Bodhisattva Nagarjuna and translated by the Tripiyakad Harmakarya Kumarajava of the land of Cao Cha. Under the later Tsin. Translated from the French. By Gelongma Karma Migmi Chodron 2001. Chapter 42 The Great Loving-Kindness and the Great Compassion of the Buddhas. Sutra. The Bodhisattva Mahottva who wishes to cognize perfectly great loving-kindness and great compassion must practice the perfection of wisdom. Sastra. 1. Great loving-kindness and great compassion. Great loving-kindness and great compassion have already been explained above in the chapter entitled The Four Immeasurables. Here we will repeat it briefly. Great loving-kindness assures the happiness of all beings. Great compassion uproots the suffering of all beings. Great loving-kindness gives beings the causes and conditions for happiness. Great compassion gives beings the causes and conditions that eliminate suffering. Suppose there is a man whose sons are in prison about to undergo great torture. If their father, with loving-kindness and compassion, uses some skillful means to prevent their suffering, that is great compassion. If, having freed them from suffering, he then gives his sons the 5 objects of enjoyment, that is great loving-kindness. There are many differences of this kind. 2. Degrees of loving-kindness and compassion. Question. Great loving-kindness and great compassion being so, what is lesser loving-kindness and lesser compassion? Answer. The loving-kindness and compassion that are part of the 4 immeasurables are lesser. But here the loving-kindness and compassion that are concerned in the 18 special attributes are great. Furthermore, the loving-kindness and compassion found in the Buddha's mind are called great. Those found in the minds of other people are called lesser. Question. If that is so, why is it said that the Bodhisattva practices great loving-kindness and great compassion? Answer. The great loving-kindness of the Bodhisattva is lesser compared with that of the Buddha, but compared with that of adepts of the 2 vehicles Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha, it is great. The magnitude is a question of words. The great loving-kindness and great compassion of the Buddha are truly very great. Furthermore, lesser loving-kindness gives happiness to beings only in theory. Actually, it has no happy effect. Lesser compassion considers the various physical and mental sufferings of beings and has pity on them, but is incapable of freeing them from suffering. On the other hand, the great loving-kindness not only wishes that beings find happiness, but also assures them of happy things. And great compassion not only has pity for the suffering of beings but also frees them from sufferings. Furthermore, in worldly people, Sravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, the loving-kindness and compassion are described as lesser, whereas in the Buddhas they attain the epithet of great. Furthermore, great loving-kindness arises in the mind of great men. Appears suddenly within the great dharmas which are the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, the 4 unobstructed knowledges and the 18 special attributes. It is able to destroy the great sufferings of the 3 bad destinies and can bring the 3 kinds of great happiness. 1. Happiness of the gods. 2. Human happiness. 3. The happiness of nirvana. In addition, this great loving-kindness is extended to all the beings of the 10 directions and 3 times, including insects. Loving-kindness penetrates the marrow of the bones and the mind never renounces it. Suppose that the beings of the Trisahasra Mahasahasra Lokadhatu had fallen into the 3 bad destinies and in their place a single man underwent the sufferings of each of them. Suppose that after having repaid these sufferings, this man took the happiness of the 5 objects of enjoyment, the happiness of the trances and absorptions, the supreme happiness of this world and distributed them liberally to beings to make up for it. Well then, this man would not reach the 10 millionth past of the loving-kindness and compassion of the Buddha. Why? Because the happiness of the world is deceptive, false, and does not free from samsara. 3. Epithet great reserved for loving-kindness and compassion. Question. All that resides in the mind of the Buddha is great. Why do you say that only his loving kindness and compassion are great? Answer. All the qualities belonging to the Buddha are necessarily great. Question. If that is so, why do you say only that his loving kindness and compassion are great? Answer. The loving kindness and compassion are the root of the enlightenment of the Buddhas. Why is that? The bodhisattva sees beings tormented by all the sufferings. Suffering of birth, old age, sickness and death, bodily suffering, and mental suffering, suffering in this life and in the next life. Feeling great loving kindness and great compassion, he comes to save beings from these sufferings, and subsequently he forms the resolution of seeking anuttara samyaksambodhi. By the power of his great loving kindness and great compassion, in the course of samsara in innumerable incalculable lifetimes, his courage never sinks. By the power of his great loving kindness and his great compassion, and although he could have attained nirvana long ago, he does not give the evidence of it. This is why, among all the attributes of the Buddha, loving kindness and compassion are great. If he did not have this great loving kindness and this great compassion, he would enter nirvana too soon. Next, when he attains enlightenment, he realizes innumerable very profound concentrations, trances, absorptions, and liberations. Experiencing this pure happiness, he abandons it and does not keep it. He goes into the villages and the towns and preaches the Dharma with all kinds of avadanas and nidanas. He changes his form and guides beings by an infinity of vocal sounds. He endures curses, injuries, criticisms and slander on the part of beings and goes so far as to become a female musician. All that thanks to his great loving kindness and great compassion. Furthermore, the epithet great attached to great loving kindness and great compassion does not come from the Buddha. It is beings who describe them thus. In the same way, the lion that is very strong never boasts of the greatness of its strength, but all the beasts remember it. Beings have heard speak of the many marvelous attributes of the Buddha, and they know that the Buddha, in order to save beings, can accomplish austerities for innumerable incalculable periods. Hearing and seeing such exploits, they have given the names of great loving kindness and great compassion to these attributes. A man who had two friends was thrown into prison for some misdeed. One of his friends provided the necessities and the other died in his place. Everybody declared that the friend who died in his place was full of loving kindness and compassion. It is the same for the Buddha who, from lifetime to lifetime, has sacrificed his head, eyes, marrow, and skull for beings. Beings, hearing and seeing these things in one accord, have called him the great loving kindness one and the great compassionate one. Sibajataka. As King Chapai. He wanted to save a pigeon by replacing his own flesh as an equivalent, and as the piece of his flesh did not reach the weight of the pigeon, he climbed onto the balance and ransomed the pigeon at the cost of his body. Then the earth shook in 6 ways, the water of the sea rose in waves, and the devas offered the king perfumed flowers. Beings cried out, "He is truly a great loving kindness one." End.